Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to another episode of Moorish History TV. And we're getting into some interesting things today. We've had about, first of all, I'm your host, Mansour Muhammad. I got my co-host, Al Mansour. And we've been, you know how we do, brother. We've been debating for a few weeks now on the understanding of the word black, it's in its etymological origins. This is something that has been a significant topic of discussion in the Moorish community, especially in relation to the etymology. And I know that my position in the past was in alignment with what the popular consensus is among the Moors in regards to the etymology of black, the English word black, and it being associated with pale. And the brother Al Mansour has done some extensive research into it that says otherwise, right? And you know, he's a very, very thorough researcher, and we're going to discuss it. And we're going to discuss some elements and aspects of, you know, this black idea, the word black in the English context and its etymological roots and origins. So, you know, I want to welcome you all to this discussion, and, you know, inshallah, it's going to be a most beneficial one as all of the discussions that we have, you know, have been such thus far, and will continue to do so, inshallah. So without further ado, let me give you the floor, my brother, to, you know, what made you do a double take into the etymological roots and origins of the English word black?
Man, you know, I just keep seeing commentators and posts on the Moorish History TV page, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube, with black folks
Mm.
making anti-black comments. And I
S-
noticed that
Solo, I don't mean to cut you off. What do you mean anti-black? What are you
it,
classifying as anti-black?
the concept that the term actually applies to what we call the YT people.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
I see it as anti-black, and I also see it as IT supremacy because it overshadows YT supremacy concepts. For example, many of the YT people believe that they are the Moors, or
Mm.
that the Moors looked like them, rather, in terms of the low melanin levels
Mm-hmm.
versus highly concentrated levels of melanin. So when I see quote unquote black folks pushing this concept that black means pale, I didn't understand it. It didn't
Mm.
make sense. It didn't fit. So I looked into it and I found that what they're actually talking about is uh, a similar, but it's not spelled exactly the same. There is BLACK, which we all are familiar with. And then there is BLAC with a macron, which is a dash over the A. And the macron is there for purposes of pronunciation. So when I looked at the differences between BLACK and BLAC with the macron on top of the A, I noticed that they have two different etymological histories.
Origins or histories?
Histories or origins sources. For example, BLACK is about 300 years older than the first introduction of the BLAC with the macron on top of the A. The BLAC with the macron on top of the A has not been used to describe a skin tone or skin complexion, whereas BLACK always has. So there's other distinctive issues with the differences in between the terms. And then I also noticed when you go into the antonym section for BLAC with the macron.
Okay, okay. Because we might have people in the audience that are not as sophisticated in language and understanding. What is it? I know what it is, and of course you know what it is. But explain what an antonym is for the audience.
Antonym is the opposite of a synonym. You know, a synonym is a similar term correlating with the same thing that you're trying to define or describe. Well, an antonym is the exact opposite.
Mm,
So if BLACK is listed in the antonyms, where you find BLAC with the macron on top of the A, that's a clear indication that they're not the same.
okay,
But many of these commentators clearly have not paid attention to those specifics. And what they're doing is they're pushing BLAC with the macron as if it's the same as BLACK.
understood. Now, what is a macron for those who are not familiar with the term?
So I just sent you a link to chat. Let's pull that up so we can, we want to show, the sources. So
For
we
sure.
could put this.
So let me say this before we pull up the data that we're going to discuss. I personally had to walk back after so many years of not necessarily being anti-black, but being anti-usage of the term as identity. When we started to encounter North Africans and Europeans started to say that we were trying to steal their history. And so they kept saying stuff like, well, you guys are slaves, sub-Saharan, and African American. You're not Moors. And so I became aware that many Europeans and North Africans believe that the Moors were pale people. And so I would often see American Moors come into the discussion and say Moors aren't black. And the North Africans and the Europeans would feed off of this. They would feed off of, American Moors coming in with that rhetoric. And, intelligently enough, I can understand the dichotomy where it's like, okay, black is a status, in US law, and then European culture has been demonized, and it's not an identity in the context of a nationality, or an ethnicity in that regard. It's a descriptor, a racial descriptor, or, in that regard. However, seeing the Europeans and the North Africans, refute and come in with racist rhetoric, it prompted me to say, hold on, we can't make a clean break from the word black, because connotatively, or however you want to look at it, etymologically or connotatively, denotatively, it's been merged with who we are as an identity. And anytime it's attacked, they're talking about people who are dark skinned and darker and a little lighter, like you and I. You see what I'm saying? Saying that the term Moor doesn't apply to us when the word Moor means dark or black, depending on which dictionary. And I won't necessarily say mean in the context like it's synonymously merged, but
Defined.
right, defined by the predecessors of modern dictionaries, right? So in that regard, I personally, like I said, had to walk back this disassociation of black and Moors and us in that regard, because I noticed that, like what you said, a lot of people, a lot of Europeans and North Africans believe the Moors were blonde-haired, blue-eyed people and with pale skin, you know? So with that, I'm gonna. Do you want to start with the source that
Let's
we have on Instagram, or you want to start
yeah.
with the Chat GPT? Okay.
Yeah, let's start with Charles. Let's start there for all the etymologists there.
Okay. So let's go. All right. Now, I've often noticed we get criticism for going to Instagram when we want to pull up our sources, but for you who all are not aware, we've turned our Instagram page, Moorish History TV, into a an encyclopedia library dictionary. It is one of the places where we have so many of our sources listed so that when we want to reference it, we can just go there. So, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and also, check us out on Instagram and Facebook, which we have over 250,000 followers on Facebook. But make sure you follow us on both, on Instagram and Facebook. But our Instagram, as well as our Facebook, but our Instagram is has become that reference source that we use. So that's why we always go to it when we want to go into different sources. And
And
you all have the privilege of going there yourselves and seeing it as well. But what you were gonna say?
just to add though, as anybody that's watching can see, if we have a source like this one, the link to the source is in the description.
A link or yeah. Okay, yeah, I see it right here. Yep,
Yeah.
for sure. If a link has been provided, but we will always source the source. So we will always reference where it's actually from in the physical world as well, if there isn't a link. But there's always a reference to the physical source. Okay, so this guy right here name is Charles Talbot Onions, CT Onions, and he lived from September 1873 to January 1965. Man, that's a long time.
Oof.
Man, that's a long time. He lived a long time.
He did.
Subhanallah. All right, so he says black has superseded swart in generative use as a color name. CEN, which I suppose is English. Blackamoor, Blake, Ethiopian, Negro, Black Moor, Black Moor, Dunbar, also Black Moorian, C. Moore. And this source is from the Oxford Dictionary of English Etymology by Charles T. Onions. And this is the link, www.oed.com. So let's break this definition down. So explain what the macron and what we're reading and all of these different things that we're looking at. Expound on that.
So we're gonna use chat. I sent you a link for chat so that we could be specific with the macron, but
So before I pull that up, do you want to say anything about this?
this source is significant because it's an etymological source, and it's clearly informing you that wart, which is the core to swarthy, was replaced, or it says superseded, same thing, superseded with black. So black and swart or swarthy are synonyms. They are synonymous. Ultimately, older literature that pre-exists the use of black would use swart. So you find some of this old English literature going back before the introduction of BLACK, the term swart is there, and that's synonymous with what we know as black.
Mm,
So we can
hmm
move on. Yeah, I wanted to show this just to point out that you notice how it tells you to see more.
hmm
And it also references Ethiop, Blackamoor, Blackmore, Negro. These terms are all synonyms. They're synonymous. Go ahead. What you gonna say?
So yeah, so with that, what would be the purpose in one saying there were more as opposed to Negro, Black, or Ethiopian, or any of those other terms? What's the significance? If they're all synonymous, what's the significance of using more as an identity over the others?
I think it's context. I think it's context. I think it comes down to context. Negro, we know, is first introduced in the 1500s or late 1400s. So it's combined with Moros, where we get the Portuguese Moros Negros, right? Which in turn turns into English as blackamoor because we know Negros means black, right?
Hmm.
So I think it's about the context is why they are context and language, rather. The context and the language.
Let me frame it like this: what benefit does a Black American, an FBA, and an Aboriginal Indigenous, you know, any, what would be the significance of our people in application using more as opposed to any of the other terms? I understand you saying the
Yeah,
context, but
you're moving a little bit too fast. You move a little bit too fast. All right, but
no, 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 no. Okay,
I
okay. If
wanna
you
get to this. I wanna get into this origin first, but I'm gonna answer
okay,
that.
no, no, no. Okay,
I'm gonna say
you
that
want to wait?
I'm no, I'm put it out there. We can come back.
Okay,
We can circle back. The significance to more would be political
okay,
significance.
okay,
For
okay.
example, uh,
That's what I want to get at.
federal, not just political, but political and pre-Columbian historicity.
Pre-Columbian,
Pre-Columbian
pre-colonial.
historicity. For example, Federal Directive 15 uses the phrase black racial groups
Hmm.
when you go to black or African American, right? The definition, it says this, that. Can you pull that up? Matter of fact, can you pull that up?
Yeah, 1 second. I'm gonna pull that up, and I got something else I want to pull up because they started on the phosphor forms as well. On all federal forms, they've started to. Yeah, we'll get to that. But you said you want to put a Federal
So,
Directive 15?
yeah, I just want them to see what I'm talking about in terms of the phrase black racial groups, right? Because none of the other categories use similar language. The other categories, here we go, right there. Individuals with origins in any of the black racial groups of Africa, including, for example, African American, Jamaican, Haitian, Nigerian, Ethiopian, Somali, right? Um,
Yo, hold on.
that's funny. That is
Yeah,
funny.
it is bad funny. It's
Yeah,
bad funny because you got
we
those
gotta
last
address
two
this.
groups. Yeah, those last two groups, in particular, the last group, Somali, they're all over social media saying,
Saying they
well,
not black,
previously, yeah,
right?
that they're not Black. But
But
a lot of groups that try to deny that, we try to tell them that, listen, in America, in the United States of America, this is how racial classification works. But,
and
but
that's
yeah,
significant because America does things this way, other Anglo Euro countries follow our lead or our government's lead in these strategies, rather. And it's the same thing with the whole concept of their modern whiteness. Modern whiteness wasn't started in Europe, it was started by European colonists in America. But
right.
today you got a bunch of UK Brits that refer to themselves as white. Y'all wasn't doing that
Yep.
before American European colonists. They
Right.
started it and y'all
Right.
follow. You know what I mean? So if you look at American Indian, it uses the phrase original peoples. You
Okay.
go to
Okay. You know what? You
Asian.
know what? You know what? We'll circle back because
Okay. All
we'll
right.
circle
All
back.
right.
I'm gonna
Well,
go to
so
the I'm
no,
gonna
but
go to the chat.
but let me final go to the chat though. But let me just finalize my commentary
Okay.
on
Okay.
on the when I say political and pre-Columbian historicity. So the reason there's a distinction, why don't they have original peoples under
Mhm.
black in Federal Directive 15 is the question we all should be asking. But the research leads to that is a political strategy that ultimately denies that we come from a people who were once sovereign.
Mm.
So that is completely obliterated when the Moorish discussion comes to the table,
Mhm.
because we know the Moors ruled in Europe for over 800 years,
Right. Right.
so so for them to refer to us under a definition that strips us of our ancestral sovereignty is totally bogus,
Right.
and you need the Moorish element to oppose this
Because
type of political tactic.
right. And just to add on to that, that's specifically because more preceded the black in English, Negro in Spanish terminologies in application to us. And it was always a political designation because it is found in treaties. You see, black people, Negro people, as descriptive terms or as identifying terms are not found in treaties. And treaties are made between two political body
Sovereigns.
politics. You know what I mean? Sovereigns, sovereign entities, you know. So that's the significance of that. You know what I mean? But yeah, let's go to it. Where you want me to scroll up at and start at the top?
Well, go down to the bottom for the Macron discussion.
All right, there we
Okay, define a macron. A macron is a horizontal line placed over a letter, usually a vowel, to indicate length or pronunciation. Main uses in linguistics/language. It shows a long vowel sound. Examples: A with the macron equals a long A. Same thing for the E. Latin, Hawaiian, Maori, and academic transliterations use it. In dictionary, marks how a word is pronounced. In science and math, indicates an average value. So that's what the macron is. We could scroll up to show them the BLAC. Uh, Should be in there.
okay,
Okay.
right here.
Do you see it with the macron? No, maybe we should.
No, no, I don't. See, show more. Let's see.
Yeah, and ask it a question. Ask it, uh, explain BLAC equals pale.
BLAC equals
Yeah, equals pale.
versus BLACK.
There you go. There you go.
Let's see what it talks about. Let's see. So essentially, Black and Blake sound similar, but they have two different origins. So
Yeah, because we just looked at the etymology
here's a
book,
clear
right?
linguistic explanation you can use that separates the words properly and shows why the confusion exists. Why Blake doesn't equal black. Old English Blake or black, meaning pale, bleached, faded, colorless, used for light objects, ash, cloth, washed out colors, never used for human skin tone. Cognates
Keynote,
append
keynote, never used for human skin tone. So all the Moors out there, y'all need to cut it out. I
mm.
see y'all in Facebook. I see y'all on Instagram telling pale Europeans that they're black.
Yeah, you got to be careful with that too, because I've seen, and you put me on to this, they're starting to claim Kush.
They claiming Kush, they
They
claiming
claiming more.
Ethiop,
Yeah,
any identity that has sovereignty attached to it in the ancient world, they are claiming it.
yeah. And this is how Rome, Greece, this is how all these other places. Now, when we say these places was originally black, they say, "Oh, you trying to blackwash history and revise history." When in reality, that's what they did. So when you go in there, you start saying, "Oh, y'all are the real black people." They're already trying to take Ethiop, Kush, they more, you know what I mean? So you got to be careful with that. So it says, never used for human skin tone. Cognates appear in Germanic languages, meaning shining, pale light. So Blake is about loss of color, not darkness. Black comes from a different root stream, reinforced through Latin, Greek, Arabic, and Romance languages, used historically as a color name, a descriptor for people, e.g., blackamoor, black Ethiopian. According to the Oxford Dictionary of English Etymology, black replaced swart in general use as the color name. This matters because you cannot replace swart with something that means pale. Why pale people were never black. Pale/light skin in English was described as white, fair, pale. No historical record calls pale Europeans black. The idea that black equal pale collapses once you look at actual usage, not just spelling similarity. The key takeaway, one-liner, Blake meant pale and was never a skin term. Black is a different word, historically used as a color and people descriptor, and it superseded swart, not the other way around. There we go. Yeah, that
Mhm.
pretty much put it succinctly. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Mhm.
That establishes it succinctly for sure.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
there's no question about that.
Yeah. So this idea that when you see black used in ancient English per se or medieval English literature, when you see BLACK, that's talking about us.
Hmm.
This even goes for the Europeans that have been taught when they see BLACK in that literature that it means people that look like them with black hair.
Yeah, yeah, I've seen that. I've noticed that. I've noticed
So
that.
you got different confused notions out there that are just totally not reasonable when
You
you
know what?
when you
I'm gonna
actually
ask it
do the
that.
research.
I'm gonna ask it that too, real quick. Is it improper for?
Well, what you should do is you should let me pull it up. What you should do is show chat the Secret Service of McKee, I think it was Mackey, the Secret Service guy. I'm about to send you the link. Drop this in there and then ask it the question in regard. Here it is right here. Ask the question in regards to the hair because this is an example of medieval English literature that is using terms or phrases like black man or black complexion. So there are Europeans out there that will look at that and think, oh, he had black hair. It clearly says black man. And it's kind of
So
like the same thing.
so I took a screenshot of it, right? So
There you go.
I'm gonna ask it, why do modern European/white people say that black in usage as shown in the screenshot provided, oh, screenshot wrong, in the screenshot provided instead of its actual application as normally used when describing black as pertaining to black people and skin.
You forgot hair. Forgot to say as shown in why people say that black in usage as shown in the screenshot provided refers to black hair
Yeah, black hair
or
and eyes.
eyes.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
black
the
hair and
other one I
eyes.
heard. Yeah.
All right, let's see. Hold on. Isn't this incorrect? And what's the word I'm looking for? Not lying and misleading to do so, and straight up in denial about the true usage of black in this instance. But let's see what the AI is talking about. Yeah, because we've come across that quite a bit where, excuse me, people have said that, yeah, they're describing his hair and his eyes when they say black. They're not talking about black skinned people. It's
And
taking a
that's
while.
int
Let's think it. I got that joint thinking.
it
Okay.
is.
Short answer, yes. It's incorrect and misleading in this context. And the move to redefine black as merely hair and eyes is a modern defensive reinterpretation, not how the term is actually being used in the historical source you shared. Here's the clear breakdown you can use. How black is actually used in the Mackey text. In Memoirs of the Secret Service of John Mackey, 18th century, black complexion appears alongside age, stature, temperament, and national origin. This is physiognomic description, not fashion or eye color. When early modern writers meant hair or eyes, he said so explicitly: black haired, dark eyed, brown hair, hazel eyes. They did not collapse those traits into complexion. Complexion equals skin tone plus appearance, not hair slash eyes alone. Why the hair and eyes claim appears today? This argument is mostly modern, and it exists for three reasons. Present day racial discomfort. Tell
There
the
it
truth.
is.
Tell the
There
truth,
it
AR.
is.
Many
Unbiased.
modern Many modern European slash readers are uncomfortable with the idea that elite nobles, royals, courtiers were described as black in complexion. So the term
Moors.
gets softened after the fact. Anachronism, projecting modern categories backward. Today, people think in rigid racial binaries: black equal modern racial category, white equal modern racial category. But in the 17th and 18th century, black, brown, swart, tawny were descriptive, not ideological. They referred to visible phenotype, especially skin. Projecting modern meanings backwards distorts the text. C. Selective reinterpretation. If black complexion only meant hair and eyes, then fair complexion would also only mean hair and eyes. Swarthy complexion would not exist as a skin term, but historically, fair equal light skin, swarthy equal dark skin, black equal very dark skin. The system collapses if black is redefined. Three, what complexion meant historically? Crucial point. In early modern English, complexion referred to skin color, tone, visible appearance, humoral makeup, hot, cold, dry, moist. It did not mean hairstyle or eye color. That's why the texts say fair complexion, brown complexion, black complexion. These are skin descriptors. Why the reinterpretation is misleading? It's misleading because it, number one, ignores how the word complexion is used elsewhere in the same period. Two, applies a special exception only when the subject is European, rewrites historical language to fit modern racial comfort. That's not linguistic analysis. That's retrofitting. Yeah. So clean one paragraph rebuttal you could use. In early modern English, complexion refers to skin tone and overall appearance, not hair or eye color. When writers meant hair or eyes, they stated that directly. The phrase black complexion is used consistently in the period to describe dark skin, just as fair and swarthy do. Reinterpreting
Now,
black to mean only hair or eyes is a modern anachronism driven by discomfort, not historical usage.
now ask it, which term is older, BLACK or BLAC?
Interesting.
Get to the bottom of this. Put
Yeah,
this one to
yeah.
bed.
Black is older than Blake. Here's the clear breakdown. Black as a color and descriptor is attested earlier across multiple language streams: Latin, Niger, Greek, Melis, Arabic, Aswad, Romance languages. These were already in use centuries before Old English and fed into English usage. Old English Blake appears later. Early medieval English only, and meant pale, bleached, faded, colorless. It was not a skin or people descriptor. Why this matters: if Blake pale were the origin of black, then black could not have replaced swart as a color name, as the OED explicitly says. Oxford English Dictionary is what OED means. Black complexion would be meaningless in historical texts, but both are clearly used coherently and consistently. One line answer you can use: black is the older term with deep classical roots. Blake is a later Old English word meaning pale and is unrelated in meaning or usage. There we go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There we go.
It it says, if you want, I can lay this out on a timeline. But okay, now let's ask it when the source that we just posted, uh the memoirs, when the memoirs uses the phrase black man,
Hold on. Say it again. When the source that we just shot lists black man,
yeah, for Duke of Northumberland,
Humberland or Umberland?
North North Northumberland. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yep,
Mm-hmm.
yep. What does it mean?
Yeah, because they also try to say, yeah, tall, dark, and handsome meant, dark hair, dark eyes. Yeah, these
As
people are,
as if we don't have these same characteristics. Like
yeah.
to say, well, it meant black hair. Well, black people have black hair. Black people got black eyes.
Hmm.
All the same stuff. So
Okay, in that specific source, when it says a black man for the Duke of Northumberland, it means exactly what it says in
that
early modern
there it
English
is.
usage. A
There it
man
is.
described as black in complexion, skin/appearance, not hair or eye color. Here's why that reading is correct and the alternative is not. Black man versus black haired man. Early modern writers were very precise. When they meant hair or eyes, they wrote black haired, dark eyed, brown hair, hazel eyes. They did not use black man or black complexion to mean those things. So if Mackey meant hair/eyes, the phrase would have been explicitly qualified. It isn't. What complexion meant in the 17th, 18th century. In the period of John Mackey, complexion meant skin tone, visible appearance, bodily aspect, often tied to humoral theory. Thus, fair complexion equal light skin, swarthy complexion equal dark skin, and black complexion/black man equal very dark skin. This usage is consistent across English, French, and Spanish texts of the era. Why black man cannot mean hair or eyes here. Look at the structure of Mackey's description. He lists age, stature, temperament, and complexion. These are physical and bodily traits. Hair and eyes are separate categories and are treated separately when relevant. If black man meant hair, fair man would also have to mean hair. Swarthy man would lose meaning. The entire descriptive system collapses. It only works if black refers to skin/appearance, which it historically does. Why people reinterpret it today? The modern claim that it means only hair and eyes is anachronistic, projecting modern racial ideas backwards, selective, only apply when the subject is European, defensive, not linguistic, not contemporary. No contemporary reader of Mackey's time would have understood a black man to mean a man with dark hair. There we go. The correct answer, plain and clear. When the source calls the Duke of Northumberland a black man, it means he was described as black in complexion, i.e., visibly dark skinned by the standards of the time, not metaphorical, not hair color, not eyes. That interpretation is historically correct and did not.
Is but that depends. Let's pull it up. Pull it up. Yeah. No, I thought you was gonna go over Vance talking about
Yeah, yeah,
him
I
being
was gonna
described as
reference it.
black.
Yeah, yeah, I was gonna reference it. I was gonna reference that. But we gotta do a show specifically about the black nobility in Europe. You know what I'm saying? The black Moorish nobility in Europe. And I don't wanna give that right now because then we're gonna have to go all the way. And we trying to keep it under a certain time.
All right.
But
All right.
because we want to get to the other sources, but we're gonna come back. We're gonna circle back on
Yeah,
this whole
okay.
subject.
Well, this establishes the foundation. So when we
Right,
get to that,
right,
y'all
right,
should understand
right.
the concept of black versus Blake,
Hmm.
which is being misrepresented as being the same as black,
Or when black is used in that era, it doesn't pertain to hearing eyes.
and often pertains skin
No, not
or
often,
skin
exclusively.
exclusively, skin tone and skin complexion. So we can put that one to bed.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
going we
That's
come we coming for y'all mirrors too.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
The
yeah,
the
yeah,
the M the
yeah,
MUUR people,
yeah,
all
yeah.
y'all out there that's trying to push this
Th-
MUUR spelling, we coming. We
Yeah,
coming. Get ready.
they're
You know what I
egregious.
mean? Stay
They're
tuned.
simply egregious. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. Look, we ain't got time for no games in this particular situation that we in. So we're gonna have to check. We're gonna have to check y'all when y'all out of line. You know,
Absolutely.
we got to be on code. We
We
got to
got
be
to
on
be.
code. Everybody got to be on code. So we got to get
Right.
this stuff right. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah,
There's
100%.
generations coming behind us that they shouldn't have to be dealing with confusion.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Uh,
Absolutely.
so we need to reduce that.
These things should already be solidified because we come on the hill, we're rising up after our elders and scholars that came before us that laid the groundwork down for us to have this understanding, namely J.A. Rogers. You know what I mean? Did
Hmm.
an extremely phenomenal
Hmm.
work back in the early 1900s on the black nobility and the Moors in Europe, you know what I'm saying? And then so many
Right.
other scholars as well. So we're continuing to lay down the bricks for the next generation to be clear on these things because what I notice happening is that there's the anti-black sentiment, like so basically white people won the culture wars in America, right? They won it. So now it's okay to openly be racist against quote unquote black folks and everybody else. And what this does is it allows them to tell a lot of lies about history and things that has already been debunked. And because of our youth being uneducated to a lot of these different things, it causes them to by default listen to the lies and follow the actual racists who are projecting these lies about these histories. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, then that's a good point because I saw a clip of Candace Owens and what's that
Nick
Mexican
Fuentes.
guy?
Yeah, yeah, Nick
Yeah,
Fuentes.
yeah, he's Mexican according to the Anglo
Yeah,
YT
he is.
Americans. They
Yeah,
the foundational white Americans
yeah.
clearly they don't
Heritage Americans, as they call
yeah,
them.
they don't accept him. They but I saw a clip where he was I guess interviewing her or having a
She
debate
was
with her.
interviewing him. She was interviewing him.
Okay. And he fed her an
Yeah.
entirely bogus narrative about African languages and ancient Egypt. And she was not able to oppose his BS.
Yeah.
You know, she just she it looked like she accepted it. Like she,
Yeah.
and it was like, how did you make it to where you're at and you don't know fundamentals? Like the things he said were just like rebutted by fundamentals
Yeah.
that
Fundamentals, man.
we
Uh,
would know,
yeah.
or the Moorish paradigm would know, or even
Right.
the indigenous Amerocentrics
Yeah. All of that.
would
See,
know.
I also put all of that I class all of that also under the Moorish paradigm because you gotta like the Moorish community has truly been the light of knowledge to the general Black community. If you notice, every prevailing ideological concept that exists right now in Black America was initiated and brought forth by the Moorish paradigm. It was the
Hmm.
Moorish community who said, yo, we're indigenous, we're aboriginal indigenous to America. Oh, everything didn't happen in Africa, it happened in America. Whether it was agreed upon or not, these ideas and concepts was originally introduced by the Moors.
Right. I mean,
Everybody mhm.
that's reflected with FBAs, Foundational Black Americans, where if you listen to Tariq Nasheed, a lot of times he has to rely on pre-Columbian Moorish American history for the establishment of quote unquote blacks being here before Columbus or
Right,
being in the Americas before you got to go back to the Moors that was here.
right, right.
And he
100%.
does it often.
So, 100%. So it's just the fact that it was the Moorish community that pretty much educated the entire Black community. And now you got these splinter groups and these splinter concepts popping up, not acknowledging or acting as if it wasn't the Moors that proliferated this information in the community. But before we wrap up, I want to go back to the Federal Directive 15 aspect that you were talking about, but I also want to bring up this phosphor form because it correlates with Federal Directive 15 because Federal
So
Directive 15 is the basis of all federal racial classifications, right? So
so
that
pull up chat back up and ask chat so the people can see why is the phrase black racial groups used as opposed to original peoples.
okay, before we do, right? Let me just point this out. Look how you got it here. Student race and ethnicity. You see that? Right.
Is the student of Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin?
Now look, what is the student race? Select all that apply. White, German, Irish, English, Italian, Polish, French, other, into Lebanese, Egyptian, Iranian, etc. So,
So they gotta write theirs in because they didn't get a box. They gotta go
well, they
up
didn't
under
get a box
other.
because a lot of them fought to kind of get like a separation. But when you go to Federal Directive 15 on the
They didn't separate them.
census.gov, they did separate them on the census.gov. This is the census. They got them here. They not a part. See, white is,
Ah, I see it.
you
Middle
see,
Eastern or North
North
Africa.
African.
Nah, if they could do that, then we gotta make them change this black racial groups. If these
Yeah.
immigrants could come over here and compel this addition for themselves, nah, we got
Yeah. But,
up
but, but, but
north
listen, but check it, right? It's classed on Federal Directive 15 separately, but in application
is still under
are
white.
still under white. You see, because it tells
They
you,
slick.
it
They
says
slick.
other, enter Lebanese, Egyptian, or Iranian. You see?
Mhm. Mhm.
So it tells them like, okay, if it's not on there, listen, because you don't see Middle East and North Africa anywhere on the phosphor form. You just see the
Mhm.
traditional ones. And so you got Black, African American, Jamaican, Haitian, Nigerian. Yo, why? Well, I guess these are the most notable Blacks. Like you got African
And
American,
pop
Jamaican,
yeah.
Haitian, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Somali,
Mhm.
Asian,
Mhm.
Chinese, Filipino, Asian Indian, Vietnamese, Korean, and Japanese. American Indian or Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander. You go to Federal Directive 15, Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, individuals with origins in any of the original peoples of Hawaii, Middle East and North African, individuals with origins in any of the original peoples of the Middle East, Asian,
Or
individuals
North
with,
Africa.
yeah, Asian, individuals with origins in any of the original peoples, American Indian, individuals with origins in any of the original peoples. Hispanic or Latino includes individuals of Mexican, Puerto Rican, Salvadorian, Cuban, Dominican, Guatemalan, and other Central or South American or Spanish culture or origin. This one doesn't apply to original peoples because it's specifically talking about culture, because a Hispanic could be a Black, a Hispanic could be an Asian, A Hispanic could be an American Indian. A Hispanic could be a Middle Eastern or a native Hawaiian. It's not talking about the racial description. It's talking about their cultural affiliation. That's why it
and
says Spanish or Spanish culture. You
and then
see?
if we look at some of the founding fathers of these places, they were black
Mm-hmm. Right.
of these Latin American countries,
Countries. Right.
Mexico, Cuba. Yeah, there
So
was
let's
brothers
ask
that
it.
founded those.
Why in Federal Directive should we start out with that? Why or should we?
Explain the distinction
Yeah, there we go.
between black racial groups of Africa
And
and
the
original
origins
peoples
origins and the original peoples in
to
Federal
get rid of the
Directive
origins.
15. No, no, no.
To
It,
get
it belongs there.
okay.
The groups of Africa and the anyone. I don't know why my joint a little frozen like that, but yeah, anyone having and the anyone.
I would say and the original peoples
No, but
phrase.
it says have anyone having origins. See,
Okay.
individuals with
Any
origins
any
in any
of
of the
yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, I see it.
and the anyone having origins.
And the original peoples.
All right. What is the significance of this, and is it racist and discriminative against the black category?
Put after racist, put comma dispossessive.
Hmm. Why dispossessive?
Because there's a distinction between dispossession and discrimination, and it should explain that.
All right, let's see what it says. Let's see. This done got this joint thinking. Another thing about it though is that you gotta be real sharp to catch that. That why is that the only one that doesn't have origins in any of the original peoples of Africa? You know,
Again, what we just say, they're coming for Cushite, they're coming for Ethiop, etc. They're trying to claim to be the original peoples.
okay, here you go. It says the two categories you're asking about. A, Black or African American racial category in U.S. federal usage, O&B census. This is defined as a person having origins in any of the Black racial groups of Africa. Key points. It is explicitly racial. It is explicitly tied to Africa. It historically refers to phenotype plus ancestry. It emerged from older European racial taxonomies that treated Black as a distinct people. This category historically described Africans and their descendants, anyone having origins in the original peoples. This language appears elsewhere in Federal Directive, especially for indigenous peoples, ethnic groups, non-racial ancestry categories. For example, American Indian or Alaska Native, origins in the original peoples of North America. Similar phrasing is used for ethnicity, not race. This language is deliberately broad, flexible, and non-phenotypical. The critical distinction, this is the heart of the issue. Black is racial, race plus Africa, narrow, fixed. Original peoples, ancestry, origin, broad, expandable. So when Black is limited to Black racial groups of Africa, while other groups get anyone with origins in the original peoples, the result is Blackness is biologically frozen. Other identities are ancestrally expansive. This is not accidental. Why this is structurally racist and dispossessive. It denies Black indigeneity. There we go.
Hmm.
Africans are among the oldest continuous human populations on Earth, yet Black people are not described as original peoples. That framing is reserved for others. This subtly removes Black people from the category of primordial humanity. B, it allows non-Black inclusion, but not Black inclusion. People can claim indigenous ancestry, Mediterranean ancestry, Middle Eastern ancestry, original peoples status, but Black identity is locked to a racial box, detached from broader human origin narratives. That is dispossession by definition. It enables reinterpretation and denial because Black is framed narrowly as a modern racial category. It becomes easier to reinterpret historical Black as hair eyes, deny Black presence in Europe, claim Blackness is recent, artificial, or colonial. You've already seen this happening in the historical debates you're discussing. Why this matters historically and legally. The wording shapes who is recognized, shapes who has standing, shapes who is allowed historical continuity. By contrast, original peoples' language protects continuity. Black racial groups' language limits continuity. That asymmetry is not neutral. Is it racist? Yes, structurally, not necessarily because of individual intent, but because of outcome and design. It restricts Black identity, separates Black people from original peoples, treats Blackness as a derivative racial category rather than a foundational human one. That is racial hierarchy encoded in language. Clean summary you can use. The federal distinction between Black racial groups of Africa and anyone with origins in the original peoples is not neutral. It narrows Black identity to a fixed racial box while allowing other groups expansive ancestral recognition. This has the effect of dispossessing Black people of indigeneity, continued continuity, and historical breadth, making the framework structurally discriminatory. Boom, bang, bow. You love my style.
So
I'm laughing
so
to the
ask
bank
it
right now. Listen, hold on. Before we continue, before we even ask us something else, we got to marinate on this point here. What it does is it restricts. This is why in the discussion they say Moors weren't Black. This group wasn't Black. You guys are sub-Saharan Africans. You see? It's fixed, not expansive. So Black people can't be the original peoples of anywhere. This is why when we say these people were Black or those people were Black, they deny it because they restricted it to sub-Saharan Africa, and it's not a part of the human experience. That's what it was saying, and it denies indigeneity, which means that Black people cannot be indigenous. You see what I'm saying? The way it's structurally fixed. So it proves the point that we was making and how Black has been utilized in the US and in Western culture, in this context, United States, to remove and strip us of the actual identities that actually pertain to it being original peoples. And this is applying to Somalis, Ethiopians, Nigerians, anybody who fits under that category. Now,
now
what
what's
you,
interesting about that is those are all nationalities that you just named.
right, right.
Somali, Ethiopian, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But they're African nationalities.
Right, exactly. Which
But
means they're other.
nonetheless, they're nationalities and they're still being placed on a equal footing with FBAs per se.
Yeah. Or
You
African
know, it
American.
doesn't use FBA, but you know, FBA is African American,
Yeah.
same thing. But
What
yeah,
what it
so
what it
that's
does,
interesting. That
no, what it does is it places even those nationalities outside of original peoples.
yeah, but and then not just that, it puts them on the same level as African American, which
Yeah,
is not a nationality.
right, exactly. Because the purpose is not to acknowledge the political identity as a nationality, it's to only acknowledge the racial component, as it was saying. But
Right,
what you wanted me to ask
right.
it?
Relevance, relevance of sovereignty.
What you want me to ask it? What is what is it? What is its relevance to sovereignty?
Yeah, because anybody that's grouped under original peoples, it appears that they're recognizing that they had or have some level of sovereignty. But they're not doing that when it comes to these African nationalities with exception of the North African nationalities. They like separating them ultimately. If you're not in the North, then you don't get to go up under the
Yeah,
other
that's why
white.
that's why they always say sub-Saharan. Okay, what is the relevance of sovereignty? Anyone grouped under original people seem to be recognized as having sovereignty, but not with the African nationalities, with the exception of North African. Let's see, getting to the bottom of this stuff, man. You know what I'm saying? People always have these racial discussions and stuff, even in the diaspora wars, but nobody ever discusses this Federal Directive 15 because it
Mhm.
doesn't care how you see yourself. It matters based on how things are being classified. What sovereignty means? Okay, this is a legal political distinction, not a biological one. And understanding it explains why the pattern you're noticing exists. Below is a clear, non-invasive explanation. What sovereignty means in this context: sovereignty equal recognized authority to govern a people or territory independent of another state. There are two different kinds of sovereignty at play: indigenous internal sovereignty, recognized within a colonial state, U.S., Canada, applies to original peoples inside the state's borders, does not equal full nation state sovereignty, is limited, delegated, and conditional. This kind of is granted to Native American tribes, First Nations, Aboriginal groups. International external sovereignty, full nation state status, recognition to international law, borders, embassies, armies, treaties. This applies to African countries, European countries, Asian countries. Why original peoples are framed as sovereign? Indigenous peoples are recognized as having residual sovereignty because they pre-existed the colonial state and they did not migrate into it. Their sovereignty is framed as never fully extinguished. This is the legal workaround that allows settler states to keep the land, retain ultimate authority, while acknowledging some pre-colonial rights. It is not generosity, it is containment. Why Africans are excluded from this framework. African peoples are excluded from original peoples plus sovereignty language because Africans are treated as external nations, not internal peoples. Africans are said to belong to Africa, not to the lands they were taking to. Even when forcibly transported, they are framed as foreign populations. This framing erases African indigeneity outside of Africa, blocks claim to land-based sovereignty in the diaspora. Enslavement is treated as status change, see, not displacement. See, when we try to tell these people
Mhm.
about this status,
Mhm.
indigenous peoples equal conquered place, Africans equal enslaved and removed. The law treats these as fundamentally different, even though both are colonial violence. Why North Africans are the exception? North Africans are often classified as Mediterranean, Near Eastern, folded into old world civilization narratives. See that? Old world. That's why I keep telling them you have to have an old world identity that predates the colonialism because of this status change that happened from enslavement. Folded into old world civilization narratives, recognized historically as state forming peoples. This allows recognition of dynasties, caliphates, kingdoms, continuity with Europe and Asia, inclusion in sovereignty narratives. Sub Saharan Africans, by contrast, are racialized as tribal, man, framed as pre-political or non-sovereign, even when they clearly had empires and states. This is racial hierarchy, not historical fact. The core contradiction, this is the key point. Africans are the oldest continuous human populations on Earth, the source of multiple ancient states and empires. Yet they are denied original peoples framing outside Africa, denied residual sovereignty status, reduced to a racial category, not a political one. Meanwhile, other groups are granted ancestral continuity plus sovereignty, even when their political autonomy is heavily restricted. This is not accidental. Is this racist? Is this racist and dispossessive? Structurally, yes. Not because of individual prejudice, but because the system treats number one, blackness as racial only, not political. Two, disconnects Africans from indigeneity. Three, limits African claims to external homelands only. Four, prevents sovereignty claims where Africans were enslaved and settled. That is dispossession by design. Plain language summary you can use. Original peoples are granted limited sovereignty because they are framed as pre-existing internal nations within settler states. Africans are excluded because they are racialized as external populations, even when they were forcibly brought permanent settled, permanently settled.
Uh,
This
uh,
distinction preserves land claims for some groups while denying Africans indigeneity and sovereignty, making the framework structurally discriminatory. What you was gonna say?
Ask it to explain the difference between dispossession and discrimination.
Okay. What is the difference between discrimination and dispossession? Damn, this is it's a pound law. This is giving it up. Yeah, I'm saying this. It's funny because it's really just confirming everything we've been saying about this issue. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Just in much more, I guess I won't say clearer
Specificity.
terms. Yeah, specificity. Right. Exactly.
Mhm.
Precisely.
Getting technical.
Right.
And hitting the nicks and crannies of this.
Okay, number one, discrimination, how people are treated. Discrimination is about unequal treatment. It occurs when a person or group is treated differently, excluded, burdened, denied opportunities because of race, ethnicity, religion, and gender, etc. Key features operates at a level of behavior, policy, or practice. Can be individual, a person acts unfairly. Can be institutional, rules or systems disadvantage a group. Does not require loss of property or power, only unequal treatment. Example, denial of jobs or housing, segregation, unequal sentencing, racial profiling. You can experience discrimination without losing land status or sovereignty. Dispossession, what people lose. Dispossession is about loss, not just treatment. It means being stripped of land, sovereignty, political power, legal standing, cultural authority, historical continuity. Key features operates at the level of structure and ownership, is usually systemic and long term, produces permanent or inherited effects, often happens before or alongside discrimination. Examples: land seizure, enslavement, removal of nationhood, erasure of legal identity, loss of self determination. Dispossession changes what a people are allowed to be, not just how they are treated. Before I finish reading that part, you know what's interesting is Lindsey Graham recently was in the media, in the news, for saying that international law and all this stuff they did at the United Nations with the laws and the treaties and stuff was not designed to go after them and other European nations. It basically was for the Africans.
I, I've been saying this for years. I've been saying it for years that the
No doubt.
UN,
Yeah.
NATO, and all of these organizations, some of the Moors was in love with and thought that they were the light in the dark tunnel were actually
Yeah.
just ploys
Yep.
by the US government.
Yeah. You've been saying that. You've been saying
Yeah.
that.
I've
You've
been
been saying
pushing,
that.
pushing it for years, It's
You've
starting to
been
come
saying that.
out
I get
now.
that to you.
But
I get that to you.
one more question and I'm
But
good.
okay.
One more question.
Before we get to that
Oh,
question, I'm
okay.
gonna read this, but I'm gonna also say this part. So as we see from this, they dispossessed us first, and now we're being discriminated against after being dispossessed. The enslavement and the stripping of name, heritage, and identity happened first, and now that's why we're dealing with discrimination.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
critical difference, this is the heart of it. Aspect, discrimination, dispossession, focus, treatment, power, and ownership, scale, interpersonal, policy, structural, and historical. Time can be temporary, usually enduring. Outcome, unequal access. Loss of status, land, or sovereignty. Repair, anti-discrimination laws. Dispossession is restitution, recognition, and sovereignty. That's what we talk about when you talk about
Yeah.
reparation. This is why I always say
Yeah.
that a lot of what the ADOS and the FBA are claimed when they talk about we want reparations, they often leave out the aspect of the recognition, the sovereignty, and the restitution for the stripping of the identity and all of those things, because it's it's not just about discrimination. They want reparations for discrimination when it really should be reparations because they have to repair the nation they destroyed. You see what I'm
Yeah, but
saying?
that's just because they don't see themselves as a subjugated nation.
Right.
They're looking at things from the perspective of individual lenses and
Mhm.
circumstances. They're not looking at all black folks and saying we are a subjugated nation, a nation that was injured,
Right.
that is due reparations. They're saying we are descendants of slaves, and some say that the slavery was illegal, or some don't care. They just want reparations.
Yeah, and that's the thing though. You can't you Slavery wasn't illegal, but it was illegal to enslave Moors. You see what I'm saying? Based on the treaties and agreements that was made. This is why I say it's flawed to start your history with slavery. Even if you want to recognize that there's an ethnogenesis, if you don't have a old world civilization or a pre-colonial identity, then you are essentially a creature of the state. You see what I'm saying?
hmm
So there
hmm
is no continuity. You fall into the guidelines that they have set for you, as opposed to saying we were illegally enslaved Moors. You see what I'm saying? There's a
hmm
difference there.
Right.
But okay, while dispossession is deeper than discrimination, discrimination can exist within the system. Dispossession creates the system. You discriminate against someone after they've been dispossessed. I just said that.
hmm
I just said that. I just
hmm
said that.
hmm
They
hmm
stripped us of the identity, the nationality, and on all those things first. They dispossessed us first, and now they're discriminating against us. You
Yeah.
discriminate against someone after they've been dispossessed.
This is why I
Dispossession,
brought up dispossession.
yeah. Now you was on point. You was on point. You was on point with that one. MashaAllah, you was on point with that one. Dispossession determines who gets to make claims at all. This is why a group can win civil rights in segregation, yet still remain dispossessed.
hmm
Applying this to Black African context, discrimination, unequal treatment of Black people under law and society, dispossession, loss of African sovereignty through enslavement, denial of indigeneity outside Africa, reduction of Africans to a racial category instead of a political one. Ending discrimination does not automatically reverse dispossession. That's why equality alone doesn't resolve deeper claims about land, sovereignty, historical standing, and self-determination. This is saying everything, the points that I've been trying to make
So,
with our people for a long time.
final question: does Capitis Diminutio
Mm.
mean black?
Capitis Diminutio. Okay, hold on. Does Capitis Diminutio mean black?
Yes, because that's what they saying. That's what I've been hearing out there is these phrases, and I want to get specific and tech. I want the community to step it up with the
Mm,
specificity and the detail
mm,
and
mm,
close the gaps on
mm,
confusion and misdirection.
mm-hmm,
So I want I
mm-hmm.
want to get I want to get to the bottom of these things.
Okay, no, Capitis Diminutio does not mean black. It is a Roman legal term, not a racial or color term. Here's the clear breakdown. What capitis diminutio actually means: Latin roots, caput equal head, person, legal status, diminutio equal reduction, loss, diminishment. Capitis diminutio equal diminishment of legal personhood status. It refers to a loss of civil standing under Roman law, not skin color, ethnicity, or appearance. The three types, very important. Roman jurists identified three levels: capitis diminutio maxima, loss of freedom, usually enslavement, person losses, citizenship, family standing, legal personality. This is the most severe form. This is the form we experienced as a people. Number two, capitis diminutio media, loss of citizenship. Person remains free but is no longer Roman. That's what they're doing to naturalized citizens right now with the ICE raids and stuff. They talking about they're gonna strip existing naturalized citizens if there's some kind of fraud in their application. Capitis diminutio minima, change in family status, adoption, emancipation, etc. No loss of freedom or citizenship. That's pretty much just like being locked up. Why people try to link it to black incorrectly. Some modern arguments try to conflate enslavement with blackness, retroactively racializing Roman legal categories. But in Roman law, enslavement was not racial. Romans enslaved Europeans, Africans, Asians. Slaves could be any complexion. So while many later enslaved people were African, the legal term itself is race neutral. Key point to remember, Capitis Diminutio, it describes loss of legal status, not color, race, or ethnicity. It is about what you are allowed to be under the law, not how you look. Important distinction ties to your earlier question. Dispossession, loss of status, rights, sovereignty. Capitis Diminutio, a specific Roman legal mechanism of dispossession. Black, later racial category, not a Roman legal one. They intersect historically, but they are not the same thing. One sentence answer you can use: no, capitis diminutio means loss of legal personhood or status in Roman law. It has nothing to do with black or as a color or racial term. Let me ask you this:
Now,
based on the definition of capitis diminutio,
you forgot the U. You got an I
yeah,
where the U should be.
is this consistent with dispossession of
It
black?
says that above though,
We're at.
where it says important distinction ties to your earlier questions, dispossession, loss of status, rights, sovereignty.
Yeah, yeah, true that, true that. Yeah, so no
That's
need to
the
ask it.
that's
Yeah,
that's the
basically.
correlation. That's the correlation to the black racial groups of Africa. But the phrase itself
Hmm.
is not, it does not mean black. You know,
See, I
the
think a
legal
lot of people, and they
concept.
said it too, people
Mhm.
conflate it. You know what I'm saying? So because this is something that happened to black folks, then they try to merge it and says it means black folks. You see what I'm saying?
Right,
Because, you know,
right,
anything negative, they just try to dogpile it on us. You know what I'm saying?
right. But
But
we're
yeah,
doing it, we're
yeah,
doing it to ourselves. So it's self-inflicted.
right,
It happens
right.
outside of us, but we're piling on top while they throw shit on it too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Excuse the
yeah,
language.
exactly.
Two more things. I sent two clips. If we could play those clips, I think they'd be perfect to close out. One, because we have a historian that explains that the ruling families of Rome were North Africans and Arabs. And if we look at these time periods, the North Africans in those time periods were black. The other clip that I sent correlates to that. And it's the same for the ancient Arabs, we know, because we already did a show on that. But I want to point out
Let me know.
before you play it that there's a lot of literature discussing how certain Arab or even African legal concepts were entered into what became the common law of England. A lot of people stop at the Islamic era with their research on the matter, but I'm pointing out that some of these concepts were inherited into the English common law from the Roman era as well as the Islamic era. But yeah, let me digress.
Mm, mm. Okay, let me know if you can hear it. You can hear it?
Nah,
You can hear it?
nah.
Okay. It's doing that again. 1 second. Yeah, it says audio tab. Shit. No, you're right. Let me fix that. Okay. Shit. All right. You can hear that, right? Oh, sorry about that.
Wait a minute.
Huh?
She had some more bars. She had some more bars. Down going.
Nah, nah. She didn't say nothing else.
Nah, it
That
was
was the
more
end.
left. Nah, it was more left. The sound stopped.
Nah, I had just stopped it, but she didn't say much. Hold on, you'll see.
No sound.
No sound?
Mm-mm.
It wasn't no sound?
Nah.
Hold on. Okay, okay, yeah, yeah. Hold on. I got you. Just run it back 1 second. All right.
Okay, yeah, I looked at that red line. Check the inbox. The follow-up is right behind it. I think they all like a minute each or something. But she got a clip where she talks about
You sent
the
two, you sent
youths. Yeah, 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 yeah.
to the
Yeah,
last one or
yeah,
the
run those
second one
two.
you sent? The
Run the
last
second
two?
one first. Yeah, but yeah, run the second one first and then the third one in
Uh,
chronologically. Yeah.
she bodied that. Mm.
Man.
that
You
puts it
know?
to end. That puts it to bed right there.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
she destroyed and dismantled that sub-Saharan and that whole flow. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? It
we're gonna have to get
dismantled
her
the whole
on.
thing.
We're gonna have to get her
Yeah,
on. We're gonna have
yeah,
to
we
bring her
definitely got
on.
to reach
Yeah.
out to her.
Mhm.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
Yeah.
So, I hope we, inshallah, accomplish the goal. I think we did. There's more to break down, and we'll be doing that in the coming days and weeks for sure. But I think this was a classic display of myth busting and clarifying and putting to bed, laying to rest all of the nonsense that's been proliferated. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, make sure y'all like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, follow us on Instagram and Facebook at under Moorish History TV, and go to our website, moorishhistory.com. All right. Is there any final words you have to say, Brother Al Mansour?
Once again, we bringing y'all the real this time on Moorish History TV. Peace. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.